Early Greek philosophers, Socrates. History and Systems of Psychology, Professor Michael Botwin, Department of Psychology, California State University, Fresno. Socrates said an unexamined life isn't worth living. That's a profound statement, and it says a lot about what Socrates was getting at in his philosophy. As you'll find, Socrates moves philosophy from the study of the cosmos to the study of humans. I'm sure he's one of the philosophers you've heard of. You may not know a lot about him unless you've taken a course in philosophy or read extensively, and we're going to present only a very limited view on Socrates and his work. But what we're going to do is focus on how it relates to psychology. Now, in honor of Socrates and starting to get to the big three, I put on my Fresno Greek Fest official t-shirt. Socrates right in the middle here between Plato and Aristotle. Little secret, I've got the shirt on backwards, but it's the only way that you could see the pictures. Socrates questioned every assumption. He was like a perennial 3-year-old asking why. And that's because he believed that many assumptions that people had were just plain wrong. Things that oftentimes seem obvious, he doubted. And he ridiculed things like cliches and pretensions. These things that we make assumptions about just because we're used to seeing them in everyday life. Now, he was concerned about what it means to be a human and the problems of human existence, more so than he was concerned with elements or the cosmos or things like that. Socrates never wrote anything down. He liked to philosophize freely, and he had a large group of followers. They, in turn, wrote his ideas down. So everything we have about Socrates is marginally secondhand. But we can be sure about that one. He wasn't the wealthiest of men, but he was the most interesting man, most likely, in Athens, and had a wide following of people, especially rich people and young, wealthy people. Eventually that got him in trouble. We'll talk about that later. So he would go to parties, social occasions, dinners, and sit around and philosophize and talk, and his followers would ask him questions about things. And he in turn would question them. Now for Socrates, at least for the sake of our discussion of Socrates and his work, we're interested in what Socrates was attempting to get down to, which was the essence of something, its basic nature, what were its enduring characteristics. And for Socrates, an essence is a universally accepted definition of a concept. We can all agree on some concept. So if I were to say, let's think about a dog, you most likely will think of any variety of dogs that you've maybe owned in the past or known or seen in television or the movies. But dogs all have some universal characteristics. They have canine-like behaviors, they have certain characteristics, like forelegs, tails generally. Not all dogs have tails. They have different kind of ears, but they have ears. They have different kind of snouts. But dogs generally have some characteristics physically and behaviorally that we can all agree on. So we could get to the essence of what it is to be dog-like. And come up with a definition of a dog that we can all accept, even though different cases of dogs are going to be radically different. A Chihuahua will be very different than a St. Bernard, but they'll still have some things in common. Now, Socrates believed that essences were of critical importance because they facilitated communication. And communication, for philosophers, really important thing. To get to an essence, Socrates used a method of inductive learning that eventually bears his name. Now, in the Socratic method, you start with a specific case and then start generalizing. And you look at what things are and look at what things aren't. At the end of every video lecture, my little copyright splash screen, you see a picture of one of my two dogs, Pippin, in one of his favorite places, the love seat in my office. He lays there and sleeps, and I try to get some work done. Now, Pippin, if we take him as a specific case of a dog, we can look at some things. He's got fur. All dogs pretty much have some kind of fur. He's kind of shaggy. You've noticed in the little video at the end, he needs a haircut. And I'll have one, and I'll redo the slide before the end of this video series. He's got a snout, he's got whiskers, a tail. But dogs have different tails. Some dogs have stand-up ears, some have floppy ears like Pippin. Some dogs have short hair, others have long hair. Some need to be shaved like Pippin, others just shed all over the place. So what Socrates would say is you'd start with a specific dog and then talk about all of the things that that dog has in common with every other dog, and eventually, hopefully, get to the essence of dogdom. Now, one of the big things that Socrates was questioned about was beauty. And he wanted to get at the essence of beauty. And so you take one beautiful thing, whether it's a beautiful person, maybe a beautiful flower like a rose. You have to know what makes up beauty in all of these things. Is there a universal essence to beauty? Something all beautiful objects, animate and inanimate, have in common. Now the Greeks developed something called the golden ratio, which is a set of proportions that turns out to help to get to the essence of beauty. If an individual has the golden ratio of facial proportions, they're more attractive than those. I'll lump myself in the category of those who don't have it, have. The golden ratio also turns out to be important in describing beauty in plants, in landscapes, in many other things. So it essentially tries to make an attempt to mathematically define what's beauty and what the essence of it is. Now Socrates was opposed to the Sophist, as you could imagine. Socrates is looking for these universal truths. And remember the Sophist from a couple of lectures ago. For them, truth was relative, culture-bound. Socrates radically disagreed with that. He thought truth is general and can be shared. Once you discover truth, everyone can agree on it. Furthermore, you can teach that truth. He also looked at knowledge and morality. And he believed knowledge is the most virtuous thing a person could work towards. And improper conduct results from simply not understanding right or wrong and being ignorant about an issue. To close, or to get close to closing, I should say, Socrates has another famous quote, and he believed that the true concern of man being the broad case of humans, is the psyche. And I want to close our discussion of Socratic stuff with look after the man, but tend the psyche. So take care of your physical needs, but tend your mind, because your mind is more important. Now, naturally, you're going to think that's something philosophers think about, the mind being more important. So Socrates brought philosophy out of the cosmos and made it human-centered. Now, I like to have lots of jokes. I like to do lots of fun stuff in my classes. Hard doing that on PowerPoint, especially when we're doing these on YouTube lectures. So I usually embed this little video here. It's not required for class. It's a category of things I'm putting in my slides called Just for Fun. This is a very old video. I don't even know the date of it. And in this sketch, which I believe is an old Saturday Night Live sketch, Steve Martin plays Socrates. Now, Socrates got himself in trouble because he talked about a lot of these notions of essence and of questioning everything. The Athenian authorities got very angry with him because the youth started questioning everything, as young people tend to do, and young people should question everything. But the authority figures in Athens thought that Socrates was corrupting the youth of Athens. So they put him on trial for that. The sentence was death. And he was supposed to essentially commit suicide by drinking hemlock. And according to his followers, he did drink the hemlock. And actually, the authorities didn't want to execute Socrates. They gave him a couple of ways to slip out and run away, but Socrates, being very virtuous and moral, stood up for his beliefs literally till they killed him. So he was convicted, drank the hemlock, and sat and philosophized on the nature of life until he passed. In this sketch, Steve Martin kind of does that, but in a way that only Steve Martin could do as Socrates. So in our next video lecture, we'll talk about Plato. And Plato is critically important because he takes Socrates' ideas, blends them with those of the Pythagoreans, and makes up something radically new. See you then. This has been a We Have Couches video production, copyright 2020, Professor Michael D. Botwin, all rights reserved. You better believe it.